It's a privilege to be here this morning and see all your bright, shiny faces. Well, maybe. My name is Gary Lee. Some of you have probably seen me around campus. I am one of the staff counselors here, but that is not the only thing I've done in my life. Actually, I was in law enforcement for 33 years. With the city of Cincinnati and actually retired about 5 years ago as a police captain. And I recognized early on in my career that if there was ever a place where Christ needed to be present, it was certainly within the scope of law enforcement. Both in the context of the community that we serve and also within the organization that I served. To give you a little background, I did not grow up in a spiritual household or a religious household. I believed in God through my childhood and went to church maybe twice a year. Usually that was on Easter. And if it was a deeply spiritual year for my family, we would go Easter and Christmas. Later on in my life, I found out that there was actually a name for that. That's referred to as being a creaster. It was funnier than that, but think about it. So I knew of God, but I didn't know God. And grew up, I came to Cincinnati to go to the Conservatory of Music here. My background, my first career was actually in music performance. From there, I went into private industry for a little bit and then wound up in law enforcement. Because of my job in law enforcement, I actually met my wife while I was working, and she was the one that led me to Christ. She was the one that caused me to have a deeper understanding of who God was and how God can work in my life and through my life. And so that was basically my story as I began early in my police career. One of the assignments that I had when I was a sergeant was I worked in the vice unit. And the vice unit basically focused on the enforcement of prostitution, pornography, alcohol, drugs, and gambling. So all of the topics that would really appeal to the dark side of humanity when you think about it. And I was in that assignment for 9 years, which was, now that I've been through it, I realize that was way too long to be in that kind of environment. But I recognized then the importance of who Christ is and how Christ can minister in my own life, and then how I can minister to others because of his presence in my life. One day, I had my staff of investigators sitting in front of me at roll call. And one of our responsibilities was every quarter we had to review our list of confidential informants. Confidential informants were people who were citizens, but they were in the community and they worked on behalf of the police. Usually it was because they had criminal charges against themselves and they had to cooperate with police investigations in order to work off their case, is what it was called. To get a reduced sentence, they had to cooperate with the police in undercover investigations. So every quarter we had to look at our list of confidential informants and either make a notation, yes, they're still active, or they're inactive and they should be removed from the ledger. Well, I hand out the list of all the confidential informants to my staff. There was 8 investigators. And one of the investigators raised his hand and he said, "Hey, Sarge, I have a question." And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "You have twice as many confidential informants as we do, and you're not even out in the field as much as we are. How do you do that?" And I thought for a minute, and I said, "Well, first of all, when I originally arrest these people, I don't treat them like dirt. I treat them with respect. And I've watched the way you arrest people. You are demeaning, disrespectful, sometimes even violent. And then you expect them to cooperate with you?" And there was kind of silence in the room, and they heard what I was saying, to treat them with respect. I remember one time I was serving a warrant on a man, and it was a Saturday morning, and he was standing in his living room, and he had like a 6 or 7-year-old son that was in there. And I said, "Sir, you have a warrant. I have to take you down to the Justice Center." And he was quiet for a moment, and he looked over at his son, and then he looked back at me, and I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking, "I don't want my son to see me being arrested." So I made a deal with him. I said, "If you will walk out to the car, I won't handcuff you until we get to the car." And he agreed to do that, and we walked out, and I made the arrest without incident. So those are just a few things that can kind of demonstrate how Christ can be present in our lives. Now, that's just kind of the background for everything else that I want to talk about today. My approach to this topic is going to be a little different. I'm not going to tell you what to do and how to disciple in whatever role that God places you in the future. But I'm going to tell you some of the objections or concerns that I have heard people say over the course of the years as to why they can't be a disciple in the workplace. So here are some of the excuses that I've heard. The first is, "I don't know what I want to do. I don't know where I'm going to be in my career. How can I even think in terms of how I can be a disciple in my career?" And I hear that from some of the students in the counseling center. This uncertainty about what their future's going to look like. How can I minister to other people when I don't even know what my own life is going to look like? One of the things that I encourage young people to do is follow your passions, follow your gifts, follow your talents. Because in all probability, God has placed those things in you already. And He is preparing you for what He intends for you to do and for you to be. So never overlook what your passions are, especially if other people try to talk you out of it. If God has put a passion on your heart, please follow it. That is the preparation. Here's another objection I hear. "I can't be a disciple because I don't know what to say. I can't be a disciple because I don't think I know the Bible well enough to answer. What if they ask me a question I don't know the answer? Well, hopefully no one leaves this place without a firm understanding of the Bible, but I can understand why you might feel that way. I feel that way. Another one I hear is, I'm not strong enough. I'm not confident enough. No one will listen to me. No one will believe me. Well, here's my response to those objections. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know every answer. You don't have to know every piece of Scripture. All you have to do is what I just did when I came up here, is tell your story. We all have a story. Tell yours. You don't have to tell someone else what Christ is supposed to mean to them. Tell them what Christ means to you. You're the authority on you. Tell your story. This is what God means to me. This is what God has done for me. This is how Christ has led me. Tell your story. Here's another one. No one's going to listen to me with the life that I've led. That was one of my big ones. Because I've had some pretty difficult times in my life, disappointing times. One of the things that we should all strive for is to be authentic. Be authentic. And what authenticity means is the behavior that you demonstrate on the outside is consistent with the core values that you have on the inside. And by the way, authenticity does not mean good. Authenticity means being consistent. Your behavior on the outside is consistent with your core values. I know many, many evil people that have evil intent as a core value, and they are consistent. They do behave that way. Hopefully, when you leave this place and go out into the marketplace, your authenticity will be positive. But that can be kind of nebulous. It can be kind of vague. Well, what does that mean? How do I have a positive authenticity? What does that look like? And the thing that's worked best for me is found in Galatians, the fruit of the Spirit. If you live your life consistent with those 9 fruits of the Spirit, you are well positioned to be a witness for Christ. How did Jesus do it? What qualities did Jesus demonstrate? First of all, Jesus had insight and understanding of the people he was ministering to. And earlier I said, tell your story. One of the things that Jesus always seemed to be able to do was he knew the story of other people. And that's one of the things that I would encourage you to do, is for heaven's sakes, please be quiet and listen to their story. If there's one thing I've learned in law enforcement and one thing I've learned in counseling, is everyone has a story. And one of the best ways to minister to someone else is to know their story. Listen before you speak. Be like Jesus. Show compassion, not judgment. That was the problem that my vice investigators had. They went in with an iron hand. They went in with judgment. They went in with authority. And they built a wall. Learn to meet people where they are. And sometimes that means we have to go out of our own comfort zone into the zones of others. Sometimes that's an intentional effort that we do. Sometimes it's the result of where God has placed us. If there's one thing I've learned about God, is He has not called us to be comfortable. And the more discomfort you are experiencing may be evidence that you're doing exactly what God has intended you to do. This next suggestion may sound a little strange, but I would encourage you not to preach. I would encourage you rather to inspire, to encourage, to lift up, not put down. And in closing, let me offer this one other reality. Don't become discouraged. Sometimes you are the beginning of the story of restoration. Sometimes you will plant the seed, but someone else will harvest the fruit. And that's okay. Do what God has intended for you to do in the moment and be satisfied. Sometimes we plant the seed and others will harvest. And that's okay. So at this point, I'll ask Charity to come up, and she can give you her perspectives. Thank you so much for your time and attention.